Welcome to the I Didn't Know What the Fuck I Was Doing podcast.
We're your hosts, Teresa
and David.
This is the podcast with two ADHD entrepreneurs who jumped into uncertain territory
and made lots of unpleasant mistakes along the way.
We were able to figure out what we're actually passionate about.
And we are here to help you do the same.
Each week, we will release 2 episodes discussing how we navigate our businesses, relationships, and health,
as well as interview excellent guests who share their own personal IDK WTF stories.
Listen today so you can hear some relatable content
as we normalize uncertainty in business and in life.
Because it's important to admit that no one really knows
what the fuck they're doing. Welcome back to the IDK WTF I Was Doing podcast. I'm David B.
And I'm Teresa Merrick.
And today we're going to be talking about our businesses before and after COVID.
Yes. Yeah. Well, why don't you get started? Tell us what you were up to, like, right as the pandemic was hitting. What was going on?
So I was running my Colorado Mastermind group more as a hobby. I had a full-time job as a business banker. I lost my income because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I had to kind of figure things out right then.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about Colorado Mastermind if they haven't watched our first episode?
Yeah. So Colorado Mastermind, it's a group where entrepreneurs come together and just kind of share ideas. And I had started it because I was doing my own side ventures and I never really found a community that wasn't like some group where they were trying to sell something at the end, or it had some ulterior motive, or it was like a BNI where it was like you had all these things you had to adhere to in order to be part of the group, right? Mm-hmm. So I started my mastermind group in order to just bring entrepreneurs together to share resources and ideas.
Yeah.
And it was just a community while I was building other side projects. So once I lost my main income, I had to kind of figure out like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go find another job? Or am I going to actually try and expand and use these skills I've been developing over the last 5 years?
Right.
And just make my own money. And really what ended up happening is a lot of people were reaching out to me, just people in my network, and saying, hey, David, they were in the same boat. You know, they either weren't making enough money,
right,
or they had lost their jobs completely. And they were saying, hey, I know you've been doing this. I know you're helping people. What can I do? What should I like use? How do I get started? And then, so I really saw a need for just some kind of personalized one-on-one coaching to help people like establish their own business and take kind of their knowledge, their passion, or even like a hobby that they're doing and turn it into something they can make money.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because my experience in Colorado Mastermind, right? I've talked to probably 1,000 different entrepreneurs at various levels of what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And we've just put together a lot of like really good shortcuts, tips and tricks, and ways to save money when they're starting their business.
Yeah.
When I first started, I was creating like packages on how to help people, right? I would be like, okay, I'll help you do a product launch, or I'll help you do a landing page, or I'll help you do this. And I just kind of identified the top like 5 things that people needed help with, mm-hmm. going from no idea of what to do to starting their own business.
Yeah, because that's when I hired you.
Yeah.
Was when you had like the packages, and I loved that you had the option. You were like, well, I want to help you learn how to do it so that like I could do it all for you. It's going to cost you more.
Yeah.
And you were like, it's more fun when you get to actually know, when you can update your own website if you need to without waiting for someone. Yeah. That was something that I did love. And then I know you still help people do.
That was actually one of my big frustrations, because when I was first starting out, I had to learn WordPress, and then any little thing I had to pay someone to fix it. Yeah. Because it's like kind of easy, but kind of. For
the basic stuff. Yeah. I feel like websites and all the behind the scenes, but then also like knowing what you need to have in place as you start a business is completely overwhelming, because most of us don't start a business knowing how to go get our federal ID number and knowing how to set up a website and those things. Like those are specific skill sets. And of course, like definitely not to downplay the people out there that design websites, because if you want a really upgraded, once you can afford to have someone who can do that. I mean, isn't that everybody's ideal in a business where they can then outsource that to someone who's like amazing at what they do? But in the beginning, you don't necessarily have thousands of dollars to be investing in some of these pieces.
Exactly. Yeah. And that really burns people out or just brings them to a grinding halt, you know? So
Totally.
it's, yeah. I noticed is that just a lot more people were looking for other opportunities. And like, it's crazy because even network marketing started booming during COVID, which isn't necessarily bad, but I always like people doing their own business because then they get to make all of the money instead of just a percentage of the network marketing money.
Right. Absolutely. Benefits to network marketing and drawbacks.
Yeah.
Well, how did it affect your life, you know, on a personal level too? I mean, how did that affect between your personal life and your business life?
Yeah, personally, at first it was great because I'm like super strong introvert. And I was like, the world is so quiet. This is so nice. And it was awesome. I was totally fine staying at home. It got very stressful though, because just the media was crazy. There was no like,
Oh, totally. Like that's
optimistic.
all that was anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's when like most of us millennials found TikTok.
Right. Yeah. And it was
Bored
just
in the house and I'm in the house bored.
That's funny. But yeah, and so after a while it became really depressing. And I was just like home by myself, super depressed. And with me, I think we'll probably talk about it in another episode too, but I've never really noticed depression in myself. Like I'm not always in touch with my emotions. And so I was miserable, but I didn't even understand that I was miserable, you know? It was just like, there's this weird feeling of unpleasantness inside of me. Like, what is this? This is so strange. And so that's when we started the podcast. Was like, it was just, we needed to do something that was new that I haven't tried. It's like, okay, let's try this podcasting thing. And it wasn't until we'd been working on it, me and Anastasia, who was working with before, we were like, hey, I think we're horrendously depressed. It's like, oh, that's what this feeling is.
That's what this thing is. That's why I'm so sad and bored and just like blasé.
Yeah. And it took something, it really took focusing on a project that was fun and engaging to help me realize like I was in a miserable state. Yeah. Because when I was in it, like I couldn't see it. So
totally. Yeah. Well, how do you think that impacted, like, did your business shift once you got started on the podcast? Like, kind of notice yourself, like, did you notice any changes in your personal business at that point? Or was it just kind of business as usual?
Well, having a project to work on helps everything, right? So it helped me get more motivated to go reach out and find more clients and just be more on the ball with them as well. And just see like the different trends that were happening within the world, because it was like, you know, you see more and more businesses closing, more and more mom and pop shops were getting just shut down. And it was a bad time for everyone. The other thing was too, I had to kind of figure out like, what was I going to sell, right? Like, how can I actually make money with the skills that I already have?
Yeah.
And that was kind of a difficult thing to do as well.
Yeah. I feel like during COVID, during the specific shutdown, like that few months was really hard on all of us, I think. So
yeah,
I think it's hard too because we were alone.
Yeah.
We just were alone in our houses and dealing with this. Like you said, it took you and Anastasia talking to discover, oh, wow, like we're really very unhappy. Like we're probably actually depressed. I think that discovery of like having your business, having a project, seeing how it could impact your mental health is pretty cool.
Yeah. I think COVID really changed how people view value. So we saw that we can't rely on like our jobs. We can't rely on our stable incomes anymore. We need to have something else.
Yeah. Stable jobs it was like, what is like a quote stable job? Like, there's very few actually.
They don't exist.
Or you have to work at a grocery store or like someplace that is truly like a staple of the community.
We all need groceries. We've learned that companies like McDonald's can still feed the world, you know, even during a pandemic, whether we like their food or not. They have the infrastructure to feed people, you know, and I think that's really interesting. The negative though is those jobs don't pay enough to make a living.
Right. So, no, there's definitely like we see what is essential.
Yeah.
But
we call them essential jobs, but
some of them are, but even then, It's very interesting, and I think that would be going off on a whole tangent. But it's like even some of my very best friends and family members are nurses, and we absolutely need them. I know personal nurses who have lost wages. They've lost bonuses. Things were cut from their coverage, and it's like they're the ones who haven't taken a day off through this whole thing.
Yeah, like how can you take away their benefits?
Right.
When they're the most important ones right now, you know.
And they were the most at risk. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
They're exposed to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Well, I think now is actually a really great time to take a quick break.
A short little
break. You're going to hear an ad from me and David.
From our sponsors.
Yes, from our sponsors. I love that.
Yeah.
Yay.
Perfect. We'll see you guys back after the break.
This is a podcast for anyone looking to improve their personal, professional, or family life.
We craft these episodes so you can learn from or relate to our experiences and opinions.
And we'd love to hear more about you. So if you're interested in connecting with us further,
as well as other like-minded individuals,
we recommend checking out our creatively named Facebook group, Colorado Entrepreneurs.
You don't have to be from Colorado or be an entrepreneur to join, but it doesn't hurt.
Just go to facebook.com/groups/Colorado Biz, that's BIZ, and send us a join request.
Or check the link in the description and show notes below.
Thanks for listening, and now back to the show.
And we're back.
We're back. Welcome back.
Welcome back. So, before the break, I talked about my experience during COVID and kind of what I was up to. Tell me about yourself, like what was going on. What's your COVID story?
Yeah, so leading up to COVID, I had just started my coaching business. So I was making a shift for my own career, personally, my own entrepreneurial career. You had helped me fall of 2019, like maybe even closer to winter. I don't know. It was like maybe November, December when I really I think that's when I got my federal ID number, which by the way, as an entrepreneur, if you haven't yet started your business, it's very exciting.
Yeah, super.
To officially be on the books.
I think it is. It's like, because then it's like it's actually born and it's like your business baby. It's
right.
Like,
you're like, I have an LLC or whatever, whatever business structure you need to work with. But it's like that little piece of paper. It's exciting. Yeah. So it was exciting. I was working with some clients and just kind of digging in. It was really great. The contracts I had with these clients, though, actually ended right around the beginning of COVID. My goal when I work with clients is to get them to the next step, and I don't want them to need me forever.
Right.
You know, I don't want to be like taking someone's money for 5 years or something. I don't think that's necessary. I want them to like springboard forward and call me later if they want another springboard again.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or to get to like the root of what's going on.
And I think that's what shows a good coach is someone who's like, I want you to not need me anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Instead of being like, well, I want you to be dependent on me forever. You know,
right.
You're always going to need me. I'll always be here. And I think that's unhealthy. You know?
Right. I think it just goes to show like, and everybody's goals are different and everybody's coaching programs are different, but it was exciting. So I was kind of finishing that round and I was kind of trying to decide, you know, what direction do I really want to take my coaching? Do I want to like niche it down? Do I want to expand? Like, what do I want to do? So that's kind of where I was. And then COVID hit and my 3 kids came home and weren't in school.
Yeah.
And Dan was off at work still because in his job, he is essential. You know, he helps make sure our entire city has water at any given time. Yeah. So he can't just take a day off. So really my focus was shifted. It shifted to doing school from home.
Yeah.
I mean, we set up in our
duties.
Yeah, in like our living room, we rearranged and we brought in a folding table and had like laptops and we got like the big screens, you know, that just the cardboard ones,
like
you know,
the
like
presentation things.
Yeah. That you'd like put, but we made it so that it would help the kids from being distracted by each other or just even people walking by because
their own little cardboard cubicles.
Well, which I had to make sure they were actually doing their schoolwork, especially my 7th grader at the time.
You're like, no Fortnite, buddy.
Yeah. No YouTube videos while you're supposed to be on your classes. Yeah. We had moments. We had moments.
I've got to watch it for school.
Yeah. No, there wasn't
Clearly.
even that. He knew it was. But I mean, I figure that's a typical like 10-year-old, or well, he wasn't 10. He was like 12, 11, 12. And so those kinds of things were normal, but it's like I had to then monitor their schoolwork. Like I definitely wasn't the teacher. I don't want to take anything away from those teachers because I feel that our school district did a really great job with what they had for the end of that year. And we chose to homeschool through the next year. Well, not homeschool, really school from home, because I definitely wasn't the one doing the curriculum.
Okay.
But it did put a whole new workload on my plate of managing the times they were at school, what they needed to be doing. Are they turning their assignments in? My youngest was in second grade. I mean, a lot of her work and a lot of the like reading stuff, the computer could read to her, but that is not the same as a grown-up sitting next to a child, helping them understand something.
Right.
So like I had to spend a lot of time doing those things that I just never could have imagined.
You've got to learn all the schoolwork so that you can teach it, right?
Can say, because it was the very end of first grade for her, but then throughout second grade, since they were all school from home, I literally pretty much did second grade again.
Yeah, yeah.
I graduated as a second grader.
Nice. After that.
Yes.
I knew you could do it.
Right.
Real quick, was there ever anything that you were like, I had no idea this was a thing? Like, did you remember the show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
I do remember that show.
Was there anything you learned in second grade that you're like, what is this?
I mean, now it's been almost a year, but there were definitely a couple things that like was like a refresher for me. And it was like, oh yeah. Also, the holes in some of the things that they are learning or not learning, which is just very interesting in general. But it also allowed me a window into what do I still want them to learn too, that maybe the schools aren't filling in. And for a second grader, I mean.
Right.
Like some of those things are just basics. I think if it would have been like fifth grade, my fourth grader learned stuff too, but I didn't have to sit with her to read stuff most of the time.
They're more autonomous. Yeah.
Thankfully, there was no way I could have done what I did for my youngest for all three. Like, I mean, it really was a lot.
Wow. Okay. Were there other family obligations that you had to kind of take care of? And a lot. So you had school, you had your business.
Yeah.
Was there other family things going on?
Well, starting summer of 2020, my grandfather passed away. And yeah, it was rough. I was very close to both my grandparents, and it was very hard. I've actually suffered a lot of personal loss over the last 2 years now. Just a lot of family has passed away, and none related to COVID. So honestly, without COVID, I think the last couple of years would have been a really, really rough couple of years for me personally anyway. And COVID just like amped it right up.
Yeah.
So my grandmother actually ended up moving. She lived in another state, moving to Colorado and living with my parents. But by fall of 2020, had like full on dementia.
Okay.
Which was not a thing before. I think just moving out of her home that she'd lived in for most of her life, and my grandfather passing away, who they had just celebrated 75 years.
Wow.
Actually, we were supposed to go there, and then COVID happened. So it was kind of a bummer. We didn't get to do a big party for them. Then I was helping my mom with that. My dad had a scheduled knee replacement surgery in January, and then 2 weeks after had his gallbladder removed unexpectedly, but like due to painkillers and the fact that he was on so many painkillers for his knee surgery, he didn't feel the pain of his gallbladder.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of times people, when they know they need gallbladder surgery, they go in, they find out, and the doctor says, okay, like in the next 2 to 3 days. They were like, we're doing your surgery this afternoon.
Wow.
Like, yeah. So it was very bad. Okay. So his recovery was several months. So really, my kids were home doing school. And then I was helping out regularly at my parents' house with my grandmother, just because when she moved in, the idea was that she'd be able to be alone sometimes. I mean, she's in her 90s, but great, she can sit and have lunch and watch TV or something. Like, no, that was not the case. She needed to be watched all the time because she didn't know what was going on.
Right.
So, it basically all of these unexpected things happened, and I spent a lot of time either with my kids in their learning, managing that, making sure they're turning in their assignments, dealing with all those things, or helping my parents. And because my brother is an adult with a disability, has Down syndrome, so he lives with my parents. My mom still works full time and was working full time from home, but also caregiving for my grandmother and my father, who was unable to do a whole lot for a few months, which actually, after the first few weeks when he got better, was driving him nuts that he didn't have the energy or the ability to be on his feet and doing more.
Absolutely.
So, there was all those factors. I think come the end of 2021 school year, at the end of May that year, I think was the first time I was more excited for school to end than
break of this. Yeah.
I think it was taking that off my plate completely.
Yeah.
Was helpful. And my grandmother, we moved her to a memory care assisted living facility really close by so we could visit. So there were things that helped. Come summer 2021, I was just exhausted. I was exhausted because I really hadn't been doing my business, but it's like in the back of my mind, it was like, well, I want to do this. I want to do this. But it was like, it just got shoved completely under the rug. Like it wasn't even in the corner. It was like buried in there somewhere because I just didn't have the bandwidth for it.
Absolutely.
Which also I think is a sign of how our society runs. We're always busy, 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 busy. Yeah. Like you were excited when COVID happened. You're like introverted. I don't have to see anybody.
Yeah.
For me, it's like my worst nightmare.
Okay.
Like I'm definitely extroverted. I do need quiet time, which actually I've learned a lot from the COVID experience, that the pacing myself, slowing things down, having a weekend where I have nothing on my calendar is good for me. And I need to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
But at the time it was like, I can't be with anybody. Like everything social that I enjoy was completely gone. Yeah. So like, I think between everything I just described and the fact that I felt like I was just alone on an island.
Did you just notice you were like burned out, or were you like struggling kind of like I was and not notice? I
think I was so busy. I didn't notice.
Yeah.
I didn't notice how really run down I was. It was August and the kids were going back to school and I was thinking, okay, now's the time for me to go back to business. And like, I literally couldn't sleep one night.
Okay.
I was awake the whole night. There was no reason why. There was no caffeine. There was no reason. I literally could not sleep.
Okay.
I finally at 3:00 in the morning, and I had this like epiphany, and I was like, I need to not try and go back to work right now.
Okay.
Like, I need to not do that.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know. That's how I felt. And it felt wrong to feel that way because I'm a feminist. I feel like women are badasses and we can do anything we want to do.
Yeah.
And it was pretty heartbreaking to feel like the kids are going back to school, everything's going to be good, and then I should go like pick my career back up and go with it. Yeah. Like I'm super fortunate that we're at a place where our bills were covered and all those things. And I'm like, I want to go back to my entrepreneurship.
I imagine you and I cope in opposite ways. So when you're feeling stressed or you're feeling like overwhelmed, I bet you pick up more things. Do you tend to do more stuff to try and make sure everything's perfect?
I try and make sure everything's perfect. I think probably women deal with this a lot is guilt.
I was just going to say, I feel guilty if something's being behind.
we want to give, we want to do, we want to and also societally, like it's ingrained into our history that women should give and should keep going and shouldn't stop.
Right.
And that, even if you look at stay-at-home moms, housewives, there's a stigma about being a stay-at-home mom for stay-at-home moms, that it's not good enough and they should be working a real job or something, which isn't necessarily true. It's truly just a lifestyle choice.
Right.
And so for me, it was really hard to be like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna be a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
And it really was a gut punch. I talked to Dan about this when I thought maybe I need to do this. And he's like, if that's what you need to do, then by all means, take care of yourself. So I'm super grateful that was his response.
Yeah.
But I seriously, the kids went back to school in August, and I feel like for like 4 to 6 weeks, I did nothing. They went to school, and I would just like, I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to clean my house. I didn't want to take care of anything. And I really think that was just my burnout. And truly, my body was shutting down. My brain was shutting down. Yeah. Everything was like, you've run yourself into the ground for 2 years now. You've been under a tremendous amount of stress.
Yeah.
Maybe it's okay for you to just exist for a little while, which I feel like nobody gives themselves a chance to do.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's my COVID year and a half, 2 years, something.
It's neat because I think everyone has like a COVID story, and like everyone dealt with it in very different ways. I think very few people it was like life is normal, you know? So I think what we can do is kind of put a pin on this episode. And then on the next episode, let's talk about after like your burnout, my depression, and just seeing how things have changed in the world. Let's talk about after COVID, what we've done to cope and adapt. And then like what some examples of what other people can do if they're feeling maybe some of the same things. And what they can implement to kind of like get to that next level or move things forward.
For sure.
I think that's a good idea.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's what people need, because I think even though we know like we've learned a lot and we feel like maybe we're emerging from this COVID cocoon that we've been in for a long time. Cocoon. Like it's sort of what it was though.
Right.
So as we kind of come out of that, and I think we're going to be feeling the repercussions of this for a long time. We're going to need to work through the trauma of it. I mean, it really was a traumatic thing. We don't think about it that way because it's not like a bus drove into our house, but it's like a bus drove into our mental house a little bit there.
Our whole world, really.
Right. Like everything got turned upside down. And I think it's perfectly reasonable that we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
All right. Well, then, come back next time. We're going to finish this discussion for sure.
Check out the next episode. We'll see you there.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This has been part 1 of our 2-part series on this topic.
The second episode will be out this coming Thursday, if it's not out already.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, please consider liking, subscribing, and or reviewing us on wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Also, if there's someone you know who clearly doesn't know what the fuck they're doing and would benefit from this topic, please hit that share button and send them this episode.
Let's normalize the feeling of uncertainty,
asking for help, and admitting that we don't know
what the fuck we're doing either.